Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Aloha and welcome to The Healing Source. My name is Paul Fletcher, and I am the host of this podcast. And we are now finishing series number 3. This is the podcast series for the mental body and how Tao healing can be used to heal the mental body. And today is the last in this series. Next week, we're going to start on the Tao healing for relationships. I believe that will be a very, very popular podcast. So I look forward to that series. But today, we're going to wrap up with the Tao healing approach to mental confusion. Raise your hand if you have ever experienced mental confusion. Some of you might be like, yeah, I've been confused, but I don't know if you'd call it mental confusion. Well, I'm pretty sure that all of you have had a lot of mental confusion in your life. And in preparing for this podcast, I checked guidance and I received some information that I'll be sharing with you today around this subject matter. Mental confusion is a experience that occurs when we are when we are experiencing information from multiple sources, and it creates conflict with our own inner understanding. So what happens is we tend to have a series of people or sources of information that we connect with prior to making choices. When you stop and think about it, everyone's life has a countless series of choices involved. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, there are countless choices that you need to make. They could be as simple as, when do I get up? Or, when should I brush my teeth? Or, what do I have for my meal today? Or, what direction do I take to go to work? Now, those are choices which most of us operate in an automatic mode. We simply automatically do a lot of things, and that can create an anxiety for us if anything knocks us out of our automatic mode, which is another form of stress. But in terms of mental confusion typically occurs when we are making choices that are not automatic. The automatic ones are, of course, the easy ones. When we have mental confusion, it is very often because we have different sources of conflicting information that scrambles around in our head as we're trying to process through and make a choice. So when we start to look at why does mental confusion occur and how can it be resolved using the Tao healing techniques, we want to roll it back to the what is mental confusion, which I've just explained. Why does mental confusion occur? And then we're going to take a look at the how to resolve it with the Tao healing techniques. Now, if you remember from the earlier episodes on the mental body, there is a lot of information that I have shared already regarding the nature of how do those negative thoughts, how did the information get into our field, into our environment. Almost everything that enters our field and our environment, we put there through our own thoughts, words, and actions, or it arrived into our field and we accepted it as true. A good example is the news. The news is not something that is something we thought of. It's something that we've accepted from an external source into our environment, or we've rejected it, one of the two. So these different forms of information come into our environment, and they can create for us stress if we do not process them in a healthy and balanced way. And when it comes to mental confusion, it's very often the same thing, but typically it depends on the person's ability or capability of making decisions and choices. If you line up 10 people and you ask them, are you good at making decisions? You're going to find half will say yes, the other half will say no. I'm not very good at it. And the half that say no, they fit into this category of mental confusion. Why do they fit in this category? What causes them to have mental confusion? It boils down to earlier in life, they were not given opportunities to make choices for themselves. They were not shown how to make choices based on logic. They were also not shown how to make choices based on their heart center. The combination is the best series of choices. We often want to follow our heart to, let's say, be in a relationship, but it still may be a very unhealthy relationship. And logically, you know, it's not going to be good for you to stay in that relationship, but your heart says to stay in it, right? So that's often because of in this example, a codependency, and that's a whole nother conversation. But in terms of why would somebody be confused about should I stay in a relationship or should I not, you can see where the mind and the heart can conflict. Thus, the beginning of mental confusion. It's a mind-heart conflict. So the mind has a variety of sources of input, which could be from your own processes, which have many facets. You have all of the input from your parenting, your growing up years, and then you have input from your boyfriends or your girlfriends, your partners, the people that you tend to keep close to your ear and listen to. You could have input from reading articles in Cosmo or Allure or any of the other magazines that are out there. You could have information from doctors. Maybe it's a health issue and you have inability, you have mental confusion around what to do with that particular health issue. It doesn't have to be relationship. And so we tend to have our own input of sources from what we read, from what we watch on TV, from what we've learned from our parents and our peers. And then we have the sources of input from exterior sources. Additionally, in the Tao wisdom and the Tao teachings, we have the frequency and vibration that's on our field, which can be karmic in nature, meaning it came as a part of our soul, information that could be positive or negative, and it came in when we were born. Our soul carries that positive and negative information from all lifetimes. That could be contributing to the confusion as well. So why we're playing right now in the field of why. Why do we have mental confusion? Because of these different sources of information. Now, these different sources of information are all for our mind to pontificate on, for their mind food. The heart, which we've just shown you an example of, is not always accurate, should be the most accurate guide, right? We want to follow our heart. But in the example I just gave a little while ago, some people will choose to stay in an unpleasant and unhealthy relationship because they have low self-esteem and they fear the loss of love. Therefore, they stay in that relationship. So it's really interesting to watch people vacillate inside a mental confusion atmosphere. And they're not incapable of making a choice or a decision. They're simply not practiced to balance the different pieces of the information that are gathering around them. Now, there are quite a few specialists in decision-making process. Most of them are very mental based. They will tell you to do things like And what I'm going to say, it's not bad to do this. You should do this. But what I'm going to add to it is how to use your heart properly. Okay. But they will tell you to make 2 columns, pros and cons, for and against, right? Why should I do this? Why shouldn't I do this? And list them all out. And that helps in the sense that it gets out of your head. Because a lot of times mental confusion creates a form of a lethargy, a form of a paralysis through analysis. First time I heard that was with one of my teachers when I was in the sales industry about 100 years ago. And he used that terminology, paralysis through analysis. Don't overthink things, right? This is where mental confusion comes in. So the professionals in the industry would say, list your pros, list your cons, and take a look at how long those lists are, and then give each one a number, right? The value, like a 10 scale. So on the pros, 10 being the most important reason, and might be one of them is just a 3. Well, yeah, it helps a little bit, right? And then you add those up on both the columns, and then you see the score at the bottom. And on some levels, that will definitely help you to be clear on what might be a better choice from a logical perspective. There's nothing wrong with that. You will find that if you apply that, it could help you. But ultimately, you want to learn to discern with your spiritual heart. And in our organization, Dr. Master Sha, he doesn't really touch too much on this subject matter. But he does have some advanced teachers, and one of them I have great respect and honor for. His name is David Lush. And David would say, I always check my guidance, but I don't rely on my guidance 100% because I have to take a look at the logic side as well. Now, a big chunk of those that'll be watching this will not know, what does that mean, check your guidance? Okay, well, checking your guidance means you've cleared a lot of the blockages in your life, and you're able to receive clear information from your soul and from your heavens teams and guides, angels, and saints. That takes a little bit of practice. David's a very advanced teacher, so he's got quite a bit of practice, and that allows him to check his guidance and get, for the most part, very accurate information about what might be the best choice to make. And nevertheless, he says he uses the logic. So how does he do that? And how can you apply this? Well, the first step would be to write down, get it out of your head, right? That's the first step. Any mental confusion you have, get it out of your head and onto paper. Go ahead and use the wisdom. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. There are people before us that have done a good job with this subject matter. So get that confusion out of your head and onto paper. List the pros and list the cons, and give each pro a value. 10 being the highest value, 1 being the lowest. Both sides, each con given a value. And then get to the end and see what the score is. That's half of what you can do. That's designed to help you to discern what might be your better choice. Your heart center, and the purpose of your heart center, is to help you to make the choice that your soul and heaven knows what might be best for you. So I'll give you an example. When I'm working with people in my role, I'm working with people 3 or 4 times a day, working on consultations, and they're asking me guidance about certain and specific parts of their life. And, as with everything, I have my own perceptions, my own thoughts, I have my own experiences, and then I have my guidance. So when they'll ask me a question, typically what happens for me is my mind will say, well, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But I've been around this rodeo long enough to know that my mind is just that. It might not know the answer. So I just I hear it, but I just shut it aside. And I say, okay, let's just check guidance. And I'll go through the process of checking guidance, check my spiritual pendulum, hear a message, and I'll share that answer. And I would say about 3.5 to 4 times out of 10, my mind was just not right. The guidance was different. And I'll tell the person, I said, well, I thought it was going to be this, but the guidance says it's going to be this, right? And then sometimes I'll say, let's find out why. I'm kind of curious why the guidance is that. And I'll do a flow, and then heaven will speak through me and share, this is why we're saying to do this. And then at the end, we'll both go, oh, that makes a lot of sense, right? So this is the nature of what can happen when we connect with our spiritual side. Because as has been shared in many of the previous podcasts, your soul and your heavens team, they're your best defenders. They are your best supporters. They do not want you screwing things up. They do not want you elongating your pain and suffering. They just want you to be happy and healthy. But many times we are simply unable to get into that space because we circle in that negative, and we just circle there and we circle there and we circle there. And a good chunk of that time, it's because of a mental confusion. What do I do next? How do I get out of this spot that I am in? One of the things you'll hear in the English terminology is can't see the forest for the trees, right? That's when you're just very stuck in that circle, mental confusion. So Tao healing can be used to transform this. And the key is to use Tao healing for both sides of the coin, the logical side and the heart side. What do you apply? How do you use the Tao healing? Well, if you're brand new, then you would use the 4-power technique. You'd use your body power, which is where you place your hands. Okay, so you might just place them in prayer position. That's fine. You would use sound power, which is a mantra and chanting. I'll cover that in a minute. You would visualize, which is your mind power, a solution where you see yourself in a resolved place happily. And the soul power, which is the important part of this 4-power technique, these are all Tao healing techniques. Soul power is acknowledging, and again, this has all been shared before. So if you're new and you haven't heard this before, go back and watch the first 2 or 3 of my podcasts in series 1. Everything has a soul. So this possible decision, this possible choice, this another piece of information is keeping me confused. All of these have a soul. So when you do soul communication, when you do the 4th power, soul connection, it would be like this. Dear the soul of this specific choice that I need to make a decision on, that I have a great deal of confusion around. The soul of this choice, this decision, please come. It has a soul. And dear the soul of and this will work best if you've written down the pros and cons. Dear the soul of all of my pros and cons, and why it makes sense and why it should not, please come. And each thing is there to serve you. Again, if this is Greek to you and new to you, go back and watch the first 3 episodes. It'll make a lot more sense. When you call these souls, the 1-sentence secret that Master Sha has taught us is the purpose of every soul is to serve. So every confusion is trying to serve you. Every suggestion is trying to serve you. Some of the suggestions are trying to serve you to say, don't take me. Some of the suggestions are trying to serve you by saying, I'm the right suggestion for you. But each soul is trying to serve you. Okay? And you invite those souls to come. Here's another soul that you should definitely invite. The soul of the highest and best solution. You should write that one down. I say this all the time. I literally use that verbiage every single time that I'm doing a reading for someone when they need guidance. I always invite the soul of the highest and best solution for that person, because it could be different for somebody else. But for that person, there is a highest and best solution. And most of the time, I have no idea what that is. But thank goodness I can connect and receive the guidance. So why are we doing these steps? Body power, mind power, sound power, and then soul connection. The purpose is so that we can clear our heart so that we can receive the guidance. So that we're not making a heart-based direction where it's not clear. We can invite all those souls and we can help clear any negativity that might keep me or keep you from making a grounded, heart-centered choice. So we have to clear the blockages. So then we move to another part of Tao healing. You have available to you, if you know anything about Tao and Tao healing, you have available to you mantra, the song of love, peace, and harmony, many other mantras, I forgive you, you please forgive me. There are, so many mantras that are available in Tao Healing. There's also what's called Tao Calligraphy is available. Okay? And you can simply call forth any being of love and light that you resonate with. You believe Jesus, call Jesus. You believe Buddha, call Buddha. You believe Krishna, call Krishna. Okay? Always a very smart move to invite the highest beings of love and light. Of course, you invite Source, God, right? But you ask them, please come sit in my heart center. And as I chant, please clear this mental confusion. So let's do this practice together. Placing our hands, either in prayer position, if you're comfortable with that. There's another position where you can just drop your left hand in front of your heart center. Close your eyes, and I'll walk you through this practice. I want each of you to think of one area where you really need to make a decision, where you have some kind of mental confusion. Could be relationship, could be, I don't know what to do with my finances. It could be, I don't know what to do with my roommate. It could be, I don't know what to do with fill in the blank. Okay? Pick that confusion. Here we go. Repeat after me. Dear the soul of this confusion, this mind confusion that I have, I love you. You have the power to release all of the confusions that are contributing to you. You have the power to clearly discern and decide what is the highest and best path for me. Do a good job. Continue. Dear the soul of all of the contributing mindsets, attitudes, beliefs, all the contributing thoughts from all the different people, including myself, that has come to be a part of this mental confusion. Please come. Dear the soul of the highest and best guidance that can serve me the best at this time to clear this mental confusion, please come. I love you all. Give them love. I'm very grateful for your unconditional service to me. Each of you have the ability to work together to help me to be free of this mental confusion, to make a clear choice that is highest and best for me. Do a good job. Thank you. So that's an example of soul communication. Now, let's go a little further. Dear the soul of any healing light balls I might have, any healing transmissions I might have, any of the beings of love and light, including, and you can say them by their name, Jesus, Buddha, Mother Mary, whoever you believe, call their soul. Give them love. I love you. I'm deeply grateful for your love, your light, your unconditional service. Could you please come to sit in my heart center? Bless me to release this mental confusion. Thank you. So for the chanting, what we're going to chant is the name of that being of light that you invited. So if you invited God, you're going to chant God, God, God. You chant God's light. That's a really good one. God's light, God's light. If you receive the message, you invite Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Whoever you invited, that's what I want you to chant, okay? And I want you to see light coming into your heart center and literally growing, releasing any of the clutter of the mind. Let us begin. I'm going to chant God's light because that's easiest for me. You're welcome to do the same. God's light, 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 God's light. Smile as you chant. God's light, 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 God's light. Now, when you're doing this by yourself, you need to chant 5-10 minutes. Just lose yourself in the chant. And as you are doing that, the light will continue to clear this confusion that you're having. It will continue to clear your heart. And that is when you ask, Dear my source, could you please bless me to clearly know what's the highest and best direction to take on this? Thank you. And then here's the secret. You let it go. That's the secret. You clear your heart. You clear your mind. You do the steps. You ask the source to bring you the highest and best solution. Make it clear. And then you let it go. Now, part of you might be thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to let it go? I have to make a decision. What do you mean let it go? Because your mind's busy. The source, your soul, and your heavens teams all want to assist you. They can't do it when you're too busy controlling the little controllers in the video game. Got to let go of the controls. So here you go. Please bring the conditions where it's very clear for me to make the choice that I need to make. And if you actually let go, probably 24 to 48 hours, something will happen where it becomes very clear the highest and best direction. This is the Tao approach to healing and transforming mental imbalance. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I encourage you to go back and listen again, as there's a few nuggets in there you might need to learn once or twice. The practice itself is very simple and straightforward. You connect the 4-power technique: body power, sound power, mind power, soul power, and then you chant for that beings of love and light and let them clear the blockages. Definitely do it longer than I just did, because this is a half-hour show, so we don't have enough time. But do it about 10 minutes. Lose yourself in that chanting. And then, I'm so grateful. Please guide me very clearly for the highest and best answer. Now, if your channels are open, if you trust your inner guidance, you might hear right there the highest and best guidance. And this is how it works for me, because I've been training this for years. But for many people, they just need to let it go. And then heaven will start moving the chess pieces on the board of life. And within a few hours, a day or two, maybe a little longer, as long as you've let go, the answers will come. Very clear. You'll be surprised how well it works. Okay? So I want to thank you all for coming. I invite you back here next week when I start series number 4 in my podcast, where I'll be focusing on all things relationship. Tao healing for relationships. Very powerful. You don't want to be missing those. Okay? I invite you all to learn more about it on my website, wellspringoflight.com. And on my website, there is lots of information. I have free courses, everything about soul. There's courses on relationship, where you can just on demand come and join the relationship course anytime you'd like and watch the videos as you please. Comes with a free month in my membership when you buy the relationship course. So take advantage of that. Click the link in the bio. And until next week, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye, everybody.